Hello, my name's Lucas. I'm 26, and I'm an electrician, the kind who spends his days untangling wires, swapping out fuses, and making sure people's lights stay on. I live alone in a small house on the edge of Asheville, North Carolina, in a quiet suburb where the streets are lined with oak trees and white picket fences. It's not much a one-story place with a creaky front porch, a patchy lawn I keep meaning to mow, and an old pickup truck parked out front that's seen better days. My life's simple: wake up at 6, grab a coffee, head to work, come home, crack a beer, and call it a night. Rinse and repeat. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and I'm okay with that. I've never been one for big dreams. Dropped out of community college after a semester because sitting in a classroom felt like wearing someone else's skin. I like working with my hands, fixing things that are broken, seeing the results right away. There's something honest about it. My mom passed when I was 19, cancer quick and brutal, so it's just been me since then. No siblings, no girlfriend, no drama. I keep my world small. The only thing I collect is a stack of unpaid bills and a few faded photos of mom I keep in a drawer. Across the white picket fence that separates my yard from the neighbor's lives, Claire. She's 33, married for 6 years to a guy named Eric, some businessman who's always on the road. Their house is bigger than mine, with neatly trimmed hedges and a mailbox that never overflows. Claire's the kind of woman you notice without trying. Not flashy, never that. She's got brown hair. She usually ties back low green eyes that catch the light, and a way of moving that feels deliberate, like she's choosing every step. Most days she's in an oversized sweater or a loose blouse, nothing fancy, but it suits her. She's beautiful in a tired sort of way, like someone who's carrying more than they let on. We're not close, Claire and me, just neighbors. We've had maybe a dozen real conversations in the 2 years I've lived here. It started with small things, me helping her carry a heavy package from Amazon that got delivered to my porch by mistake, her waving from across the fence when we're both out, watering our plants, or that one time I replaced a flickering bulb on her front porch because she couldn't reach it. She always says thanks with a quick smile, but it's the kind that doesn't linger. Polite, not personal. Lately, though, I've noticed something off. Claire's been quieter, standing on her porch for too long, staring at nothing. Sometimes her eyes are red, like she's been crying but doesn't want anyone to know. The first time I saw it, I asked if she was okay. She just shrugged and said, "He forgot dinner again." Her voice was small, like she was trying to convince herself it wasn't a big deal. I didn't push. What do you say to that? I figured Eric was just busy, like always off closing deals in some city I'd never visit. But it kept happening. I'd see her out there alone, a plate of food, untouched on the patio table, her phone face down, like she didn't want to check it. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those gray days where the clouds hang low and threaten rain but never commit. I'd just gotten home from a long job rewiring an old diner downtown that smelled like grease and burnt coffee. My hands were still smudged with dust, and I was bone-tired, ready to collapse on the couch with a sandwich. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Claire on her porch, sitting on a wicker chair, knees pulled up to her chest. She was in a navy sweater, too big for her frame, and her hair was loose, blowing slightly in the breeze. A glass of water sat on the table beside her, untouched. She looked lost. Not sad exactly, but like she was somewhere else entirely. I should have just waved and gone inside. That's what I usually do. Keep it simple, keep it neighborly. But something about the way she sat there so still made me pause. I walked to the edge of my yard near the fence and called out, "Hey, Claire, you good?" She looked up, startled, like she hadn't noticed me pull in. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I thought she might brush me off again. But she didn't. She just shook her head barely and said, "He forgot dinner again." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she looked away out toward the street where kids were riding bikes in lazy circles. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the way her shoulders slumped, or the fact that I'd seen her like this too many times. The words just slipped out before I could stop them. If I were him, I'd never let you eat dinner alone. The air went still. Claire's head turned slowly, her green eyes locking onto mine. It wasn't anger or surprise, it was something heavier, like she was seeing me for the first time. My heart thudded loud enough I was sure she could hear it. I opened my mouth to backtrack, to laugh it off, but nothing came out. She didn't say a word either. She just stared. Her lips parted slightly like she was trying to decide if I meant it. Then she gave a small nod, barely noticeable, and looked back at the street. I turned and walked into my house, my face burning. What the hell was that, Lucas? I muttered to myself, tossing my keys on the counter. I just said something stupid to my married neighbor, something that sounded way too personal. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped it open, and stood there, replaying her nod in my head. It wasn't a smile, wasn't a dismissal. It was something else. I didn't know what, but it stayed with me all night like a song stuck on repeat. The next day dragged. I was on a job in a strip mall off Tunnel Road replacing a busted breaker box that smelled like burnt plastic. My mind wasn't on the wires. Every time I blinked, I saw Claire's face from the night before, those green eyes, the way she'd nodded like my words had landed somewhere deep. I kept replaying it, kicking myself for opening my mouth. By the time I got home, the sky was dark, a thin drizzle smearing the streetlights into blurry halos. I tossed my tool bag by the door, kicked off my boots, and started poking around the kitchen for something to eat. The fridge offered leftover pizza and a half-empty jar of pickles. Great. I was elbow deep in an outlet I'd been meaning to fix stripped wires, screwdriver in hand, when the knock came. Soft, almost hesitant, like someone testing if the house was empty. It was 11:47 p.m. I froze, listening. Another knock lighter, this time followed by the faint creak of the porch boards. Nobody came by this late. Not the neighbors, not the pizza guy. I wiped my hands on my jeans, walked to the door, and opened it. Claire stood there. She had a small suitcase at her feet, the kind with wheels that looked too new for this kind of night. A beige tote bag hung over her shoulder, and her hair was damp from the rain clinging to her cheeks. She wasn't crying. Her face was calm, almost too calm, like she'd made up her mind hours ago and was just now acting on it. She wore a dark trench coat unbuttoned over a simple gray sweater and jeans. Her hands were clasped in front of her knuckles, white. "I don't want to go back there tonight," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor underneath like a wire about to snap. I blinked, my brain scrambling to catch up. "Claire, what's going on?" She glanced down at the suitcase, then back at me. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without thinking. "Yeah, of course." She wheeled the suitcase, and the sound of it rolling over the hardwood loud in the quiet. I closed the door behind her, the click echoing. The living room felt smaller with her in it. The lamp in the corner cast a warm glow, picking up the dust on the coffee table and the faint smell of pine from the fireplace I hadn't lit in weeks. Claire stood in the middle of the rug, looking around like she was trying to place herself. I noticed her hands still clasped, still tight. "You okay?" I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She let out a breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "No, not really." I gestured to the couch, an old brown thing with a tear in one arm. "Sit. I'll, make tea or something." She nodded and sat, placing the tote bag beside her. The suitcase stayed by the door like it wasn't sure it belonged. I moved to the kitchen, filling the kettle, my hands moving on autopilot. My mind was racing. Claire was in my house, at midnight, with a suitcase. I glanced back at her. She was staring at the floor, her fingers twisting the hem of her coat. I wanted to ask what happened, but the words felt too heavy, like they'd break something. The kettle clicked off. I poured hot water over a chamomile tea bag, Mom's old stash still in the cupboard, and carried the mug to her. She took it with both hands, wrapping them around it like it was the only warm thing in the world. "Thanks," she said, her voice softer now. I sat across from her in the armchair, the one with the crooked leg. The silence stretched thick but not uncomfortable. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping the windows. I cleared my throat. "You don't have to tell me anything, but you want to talk." She looked up, her eyes catching the light. "They weren't red tonight, just tired." "I found messages," she said finally, "on his phone. Some girl 23 works at his office in Charlotte. They meet up when he's on business. Same hotel, same excuses." She paused, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I wasn't supposed to see them. He left his phone on the counter this morning. I wasn't snooping. It just lit up." I nodded, not sure what to say. My stomach twisted. Eric always seemed like a guy who had it together, nice car, sharp suits, always waving when he mowed the lawn. But I'd seen Claire's face too many times, heard the way her voice dropped when she talked about him forgetting dinner. I wasn't surprised, and that made me feel worse. I confronted him. She continued, her voice steady but low. He didn't even deny it, just said it was nothing serious, that I was overreacting. Told me to calm down. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Calm down. Like I'm the one breaking everything. She sipped the tea, her hand steadier now. I packed a bag. Told him I needed space. He didn't care. Just said, do what you want. So I left. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Why here? I mean, your sister's in town, right? Or a hotel? My sister's in Europe for 2 weeks, she cut in. And I didn't want a hotel. It feels cold, lonely. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. I don't know why I came here, Lucas. I just thought of you. After what you said yesterday, about dinner. My face heated up. I looked down at my hands, still smudged with grease from the outlet. I didn't mean to, I know, she said quickly. But it stuck with me. You didn't say it to be nice, you meant it. And tonight, I needed to be somewhere that felt like that. The room went quiet again, just the rain and the faint hum of the fridge. I didn't know what to do with that. Claire in my house, trusting me because of some dumb thing I'd said. I stood up, grabbed a blanket from the ottoman and handed it to her. It's late. You should sleep. Couch isn't much, but it's yours as long as you need. She took the blanket, her fingers brushing mine for a second. Thank you, she said, and this time her voice cracked. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She curled up on the couch, pulling the blanket over her shoulders. I turned off the lamp, leaving just the glow from the kitchen. I grabbed a pillow from my room and tossed it to her. She caught it, gave a small smile, and tucked it under her head. Within minutes, her breathing slowed, steady and deep. She was asleep. I stood there watching her for a moment. Her face was softer in sleep, the tension gone. She didn't look like Eric's wife anymore, or the neighbor who waved politely. She looked like Claire, someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. I grabbed a spare blanket from the closet and lay on the floor across the room, staring at the ceiling. The rain kept falling, and for the first time in years, my house didn't feel empty. I woke up to the smell of coffee. Not the instant stuff I usually dumped into a mug, but real coffee, rich, dark, with a hint of something nutty. The floor was hard under my back, the blanket twisted around my legs. For a second, I forgot where I was then. It hit me, Claire. The couch. Last night. I sat up, rubbing my neck, and saw her in the kitchen. She was standing at the counter back to me, wearing one of my old hoodies, gray frayed at the cuffs, way too big for her. Her hair was a mess, loose strands falling over the collar, and she was pouring coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. The morning light came through the window, soft and gray, catching the steam rising from the pot. She hadn't noticed me yet. I cleared my throat and she turned, startled, then smiled, small but real. Morning, she said. Hope you don't mind. I found the coffee. Figured you'd need it after sleeping on the floor. I stood, stretching, my spine cracking. Yeah, well, couch is yours. Coffee smells good. She handed me a mug, black, no sugar, just how I like it. I wasn't sure how you take it, but I remembered you drinking it straight at that block party last summer. I took the mug, surprised she'd noticed. You've got a good memory. She shrugged, leaning against the counter. I notice things. Her eyes flicked to the hoodie. This okay, my clothes are in the wash. Looks better on you than it ever did on me. I said, then winced. Too much. But she just laughed a quiet sound and sipped her coffee. We stood there drinking in silence. The house felt different with her in it, warmer, like the walls had been holding their breath and finally let go. I wanted to ask how she slept, if she was okay, but the questions felt clumsy. She beat me to it. I'm not staying long, she said, staring into her mug. Just a few days. Need to figure out everything. Stay as long as you need, I said. No rush. She nodded, then looked around the kitchen, peeling linoleum, the old stove with one burner that didn't work the stack of takeout menus on the fridge. You live alone, she said, not a question. Yeah, been that way since Mom passed. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. Long time ago. I set my mug down, suddenly aware of how small the kitchen was. You eat yet? She shook her head. Not hungry. I opened the fridge, pulled out eggs and a loaf of bread that wasn't too stale. I make a mean scrambled egg. You in? She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. We moved around each other like we'd done it before. I cracked eggs. She found a pan. I buttered the toast. She stirred. It wasn't planned, just natural. The radio on the counter played low, some old country station I never bothered to change. She hummed along to a song I didn't know, her voice soft, almost shy. I caught myself watching her, the way her fingers gripped the spatula, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. I looked away, focusing on the toast. We ate at the table, a rickety thing with one wobbly leg. She picked at her eggs, more pushing them around than eating. I didn't push. After a while, she spoke. I keep thinking about the messages she said, her voice low. Not the words, just how easy it was for him. Like I was a checkbox he forgot to mark. I set my fork down. You don't deserve that. She looked at me, her eyes searching. I know, but knowing and feeling are different. I nodded, not sure what to say. She went on, her voice steadier now. I stayed because I thought it was my job. To fix things. To keep the house running, the marriage together. But I was the only one trying. The words hung there heavy. I thought of Mom, how she'd stayed with Dad through his drinking, his yelling, until the cancer took her. I never understood it. Still don't. You're not alone now. I said the words out before I could stop them. Claire's eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then she looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I don't know what I'm doing, Lucas. I just know I can't go back. You don't have to, I said. Not yet. She stayed another night, then another. The couch became her spot, the blanket folded neatly each morning. She'd wake before me, make coffee, leave a mug on the counter. I'd come home from work and she'd be there, reading on the porch, watering my neglected plants, or just sitting staring at the fence like it held answers. We didn't talk much about Eric, but his name was there, in the silences, in the way she flinched when her phone buzzed. One evening, I found her in the living room holding an old photo from my shelf, me and Mom at a lake, both of us sunburned and grinning. She looked up, guilty. Sorry, I was dusting. It's okay, I said, sitting beside her. That's my mom, before she got sick. Claire studied the photo. You look like her. Same eyes. I nodded, my throat tight. She was the best. Always taking care of people, even when she shouldn't have. Claire set the photo down, her fingers lingering on the frame. You do that too, she said quietly. Take care of people. I laughed, awkward. I fix lights. Not exactly saving the world. You let me stay here, she said. That's something. I didn't know how to respond. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the darkening street. I used to think love was about staying no matter what. Now I think it's about knowing when to leave. I watched her, the way the light hit her profile, the way she stood, like she was holding herself together with sheer will. My house wasn't empty anymore, but it wasn't full either. It was something in between, something I didn't have a name for. That night, she fell asleep on the couch again, the blanket pulled up to her chin. I lay on the floor, listening to her breathe. The rain had stopped, and the world outside was quiet, just the hum of crickets and the occasional car passing. I thought about her words, about leaving, about staying. I didn't know what this was or where it was going, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't in a hurry to figure it out. The days blurred into a routine I never expected. Claire didn't leave after a few nights. A week turned into 2, then 3. She'd text her sister updates, check in with a lawyer about separation papers, but she stayed. The couch stayed made up, but more often she'd wander into the kitchen in the mornings, wearing my hoodies or an old flannel shirt I'd left out. Her suitcase sat unpacked in the corner of the spare room I'd cleared out, really just a junk space with a futon and boxes of Mom's old things. She never asked to stay longer, she just did, and I never asked her to go. It started small. I'd come home from a job sweaty, covered in insulation dust, and find the porch swept, the mail sorted on the counter. One evening, I walked into the smell of garlic and onions sizzling in a pan. Claire was at the stove, stirring something in my ancient cast-iron skillet, her hair tied back with a rubber band from my toolbox. You cook? I asked, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. She glanced over her shoulder, a smirk playing on her lips. I used to, before takeout became the norm. She nodded at the table set with two plates mismatched but clean. Pasta. Nothing fancy. Figured you'd be hungry. I washed up, changed into a clean shirt, and sat down. The sauce was simple tomatoes from a can herbs she'd found in the back of my cupboard, but it was the best thing I'd eaten in months. We ate in silence at first, the clink of forks the only sound. Then she asked about my day, really asked. Not the polite how was work, but specifics. What broke, how I fixed it. Why the old wiring in those mountain cabins always gave out in the winter. I told her. About the widow in Black Mountain whose heater kept shorting, how I'd stayed late to reroute the panel so she wouldn't freeze. Claire listened, her eyes on mine, nodding like it mattered. You're good at this, she said. Fixing things. People too, maybe. I laughed it off. Lights not lives, but she didn't laugh. You fixed mine a little, letting me stay. After dinner, she insisted on washing dishes. I dried. Our hands brushed in the soapy water and neither of us pulled away. It wasn't charged, not like that, just comfortable. Like we'd been doing it for years. The next morning, I showed her how to use the drill. She'd mentioned a loose shelf in the spare room, and instead of letting me handle it, she wanted to try. I handed her the cordless DeWalt, showed her how to set the bit. She drilled the holes, steady, her tongue peeking out in concentration. When the shelf went up straight, she beamed like a kid who'd just tied her shoes for the first time. Your turn, she said, wiping sawdust off her hands. Pancakes, I make them fluffy. You burn them, I bet. She was right. My first batch came out charred on one side, raw on the other. She took over flipping them with a flick of the wrist, adding blueberries she'd bought at the farmer's market down the road. We ate them, stacked high, drizzled with syrup, arguing over who got the last one. I let her win. Her laugh, light genuine, filled the kitchen, bouncing off the walls like it belonged there. The intimacy crept in quietly. Not touches or kisses, but shared spaces. She'd fall asleep on the couch watching old reruns, Friends or Seinfeld, and I'd carry an extra blanket over, tucking it around her without waking her. Mornings I'd find her notes on the counter. Milk's low, or fixed your leaky faucet, tighten the washer. She started joining me on small jobs, handing tools when I worked on the truck in the driveway. Her hands got calloused, smudged with grease, and she wore it like a badge. One afternoon I was out back fiddling with the breaker box for the porch light that kept flickering. The sun was high, beating down, and I was balanced on a stepladder, screwdriver in teeth, when a jolt hit me sharp like a bee sting. Nothing serious, just a nick from a live wire, but it made me yelp and drop the tool. Claire came running from the house, barefoot, eyes wide. Lucas, you okay? I climbed down, shaking my hand out. Yeah, just stupid. Shorted myself. She grabbed my arm, inspecting the faint red mark. Her face was pale, then she burst out laughing, head back, full-throated. God, you trying to make me a widow before I'm even divorced? I stared at her, the laugh catching me off guard. It was the first time I'd heard it like that, free, unfiltered. My face burned, but I laughed too, rubbing the back of my neck. Not planning on it. She punched my shoulder lightly. Good, because I'd have to learn how to reset breakers myself, and I'm just getting the hang of drills. From then on, the house had rhythm. We'd grocery shop together, her pushing the cart, me tossing in random things like root beer or chips. Evenings we'd cook trading recipes. She showed me how to make her mom's chili. I grilled steaks on the rusty barbecue out back. We'd eat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, fireflies starting their dance. She'd talk about her job, freelance graphic design, mostly logos for small businesses, and I'd listen, asking questions I actually cared about the answers to. Nights were quieter. She'd read on the couch legs tucked under her while I tinkered with a radio in the corner. Sometimes we'd talk late about nothing heavy. Just favorites, movies, hers classics like Casablanca mine, dumb action flicks, music she liked, folk, I stuck to rock places. We'd go if money wasn't tight, her Paris, me anywhere with good hiking. She never mentioned Eric unless her phone rang, and even then she'd silence it, her jaw tightening for a second, before softening again. One night after a particularly good meal, her lasagna, my garlic bread, we sat on the porch steps sharing a beer. The air was cool, crickets loud. She leaned back on her elbows, looking at the stars. I don't feel like his wife anymore, she said suddenly. Haven't for a while. But here, I feel like me again. I nodded, taking a swig. Good, you should. She turned to me, her face close in the dim light. You make it easy, Lucas. Being here, with you. I didn't know what to say. My heart thudded, but I just bumped her shoulder with mine. You make the pancakes fluffy? That helps. She laughed, resting her head on my shoulder for a moment. It wasn't a move, it was just there. Natural. The kind of touch that didn't need explaining. Weeks in the house wasn't mine anymore. It was ours in the small ways, her coffee mug on the hook, my tools mixed with her sketch pads on the table. She wasn't the sad neighbor across the fence. She was Claire laughing in my kitchen, handing me wrenches, falling asleep to the sound of rain on the roof. And I wasn't just the guy who fixed things. I was the one she came home to. One evening I came back from the store to find her in the backyard, a small fire going in the old pit I never used. She was feeding papers into the flames, photos I realized. Wedding pictures, love letters yellowed at the edges. A plane ticket stub from a trip they never took. The fire crackled, orange light dancing on her face. She looked up as I approached. I think you should have this, she said, holding out a small tin box. Mint candy's the kind I'd mentioned once from childhood road trips with Mom. I took it, popping the lid. The sharp scent hit me. Why? So you remember, she said, her voice soft over the fire's pop, that today someone trusted you enough to burn the past. I sat beside her, our shoulders touching. We watched the flames die down, the smoke curling up into the night. Some things didn't need words. Some wounds healed in the quiet, with someone just sitting there, staying. The morning Claire left started like any other, except it didn't. I woke to the smell of coffee, but the house was quieter than usual. No clatter of pans, no soft humming from the kitchen. I rolled off the floor, still hadn't moved to the bed, out of some stubborn habit, and padded down the hall. Claire was at the table, fully dressed, her hair tied back neatly. The suitcase was by the door again, zipped shut. A single key sat on the table in front of her, glinting under the morning light. I found a place, she said, not looking up at first. A small apartment downtown, not far. Starts next week. I stood there, mug in hand, the coffee suddenly tasting bitter. That's good, I managed. My voice sounded flat, like it belonged to someone else. She finally met my eyes. I need to start over, Lucas, on my own terms. I nodded, setting the mug down. Yeah, you do. The air felt heavy, like the moments before a storm. I wanted to say something, ask her to stay, tell her the house felt right with her in it, but the words stuck. She'd been here a month, maybe more. The couch still had the indent of her body. The fridge held her almond milk, and the backyard fire pit still smelled of burnt paper. But she was right. This wasn't her home, not yet. She stood smoothing her sweater. You've given me more than you know. Space. Time. A place to breathe. She picked up the key, turning it over in her fingers. I'm not running this time. Just moving forward. I walked her to the door, the floorboards creaking under us. The porch was cool, the grass still wet from last night's dew. Her car was packed, 2 boxes in the back seat, the tote bag on the passenger seat. She wheeled the suitcase down the steps, and I followed, hands in my pockets. The fence between our houses looked smaller now, like it didn't matter anymore. At the car, she stopped, turning to me. I'll be back for the rest of my stuff. The plants, maybe the skillet. She smiled, but it was soft, tinged with something I couldn't name. Take your time, I said. Skillet's yours if you want it. She laughed, a quick sound that broke the tension. Then she grew quiet, her eyes searching mine. That thing you said. About dinner. About not letting me eat alone. I swallowed my throat tight. I meant it. I know. She stepped closer, close enough I could smell her shampoo, something citrusy, new. If one day I want that dinner, with someone who shows up, you'll still be across the fence. My heart thudded loud in the quiet. Always. She nodded, then did something I didn't expect. She reached out her hand, brushing mine just for a second. Her fingers were warm, steady. Don't make jokes like that, she said, her voice low, teasing, but not quite. I might knock again. I grinned despite myself. I'll leave the porch light on. She got in the car, started the engine, and pulled out slow. I stood there watching the taillights disappear down the street, the morning sun climbing higher. The house was silent when I went back in. The couch was bare, the blanket folded neatly. Her mug was in the sink, rinsed clean. I opened the fridge, her almond milk was gone, but the mint tin sat on the counter right where she'd left it. I popped it open, took a candy, and let the sharp taste settle on my tongue. The house was empty again, but not like before. It held something now, her laugh echoing in the kitchen, the faint scent of her on the hoodie I hadn't washed, the memory of her standing in my backyard, burning the past. I wasn't waiting, not really, but I wasn't closing the door either. Some nights I'd sit on the porch, beer in hand, watching the stars. The fence was still there, but it didn't feel like a wall anymore. Claire's new place was 10 minutes away, close enough to wave if we passed on the street, far enough for her to build what she needed. I fixed lights, mowed the lawn, added a new shelf in the spare room where her boxes had been. Life moved on, but it carried her in the small things, the way I made pancakes now fluffy like she taught me, or the extra mug I kept on the hook just in case. Love isn't always fireworks or grand promises. Sometimes it's a knock at midnight, a shared plate of eggs, a tin of mints left on the counter. Sometimes it's letting someone leave so they can come back on their own terms. Claire wasn't my wife, wasn't my girlfriend. She was the woman who showed up when she had nowhere else, who laughed in my kitchen, who trusted me to stay when she couldn't. And if one day she knocked again because she wanted dinner, or just to sit on the porch and not say anything, I'd be there. The light would be on, the skillet would be ready, and I'd never let her eat alone. I closed the mint tin, slipped it into my pocket, and smiled at the quiet. Some doors close so others can open. And sometimes the person who walks away isn't gone for good. They're just finding their way back.